The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
We do have secret prisons. That is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. It is 2 weeks until Election Day. And if you're the slightest bit of political junkie like I am, you are as excited as the Super Bowl, the World Series, and the Olympics all wrapped up into one. I don't know about you, I find it magical that day when you go into the polling place, that day when Americans all across the country in every one of the 50 states and D.C. Get together from age 18 to 118, men and women, all walks of life, and go in and choose their leaders. It is what makes America one of the greatest countries on earth, the consent of the governed. I approach this as a Democrat. My guest today, Mike Lane, frequent guest on the show, Republican strategist, approaches it as a Republican. But I know, Mike, that just stepping back a little bit from our political hats, as an American, I'll bet you're as excited on Election Day as I am. You
Mark,
wake up.
It's bigger than the Super Bowl and the World Series and the Olympics wrapped into one. It is the political equivalent of the creation of the universe.
Whoa, okay. So there you go. That's even more than I was going to say. But no, it's a wonderful thing. And I ask you, all of you, I know everyone listening to my voice is going to go out. All of you are registered. You're all going to vote. Some of you will vote early, which is fine. In Virginia, there's a million reasons to vote early. Check it out. If you can't be available on Election Day, you make sure that you go ahead and vote. But whether you're voting on Election Day or early, sometimes you have to stand in line, particularly that morning of Election Day. The lines are pretty long. Just think about how important it is, the consent of the governed, how many people fought and died to have that moment. And stick around. You could be a little late to work. Make sure you vote on Election Day.
Absolutely. There is no excuse not to vote. In fact, if you don't vote, you are irresponsible.
If you don't vote, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain about what any of your government does. You can't complain about the president. You can't complain about Congress. You can't complain about your local leaders because you did nothing about it. So I'm sorry. You forfeit your right to complain for until the next election. For at least 4 years.
I'm on that side. We agree.
We do. This may be the only time we agree tonight. Tonight is also, of course, for all of you who are watching this, which is at least 60 million Americans, which is 1/5 of us. Tonight is the night of the last presidential debate. We have been through 2 presidential debates and a vice presidential debate. And tonight it's on foreign policy. Now, I'm sure, Mike, you would agree with me and every other strategist in the United States that always says it's the economy, stupid, particularly now. People are going to vote on jobs and things like that. So what is the role of tonight's debate? Who will foreign policy convince? Is this just for show or will fireworks really happen tonight?
Well, all of the above. You and I agree, as do, I believe, most of the experts.
The punditocracy?
Us more so than they. But it probably is ultimately on Election Day going to be a decision that voters make based on the economy.
And other issues, immigration, social issues, guns, abortion, civil rights, but local issues.
There are a plethora of single-issue voters where people will cast their vote based on a single selected or a small set of issues. But ultimately, it's going to be an economic election, I believe, and a referendum on the president.
I agree.
However, we've had this commission on debates now for 20 years or whatever it is, and they've always set it up where they have one domestic policy debate and one foreign policy debate, and they're just stuck in that rut. And so tonight is our foreign policy debate. Will there be fireworks? Yes. Will there be disagreement? Yes. Will there be, horns and heads butting? Yes. Will it, in the end, make a big difference? Maybe.
Well, it may because of the headbutting and the horns locking and the things they say to each other more than the overall policy. We will get to domestic policy. It is, of course, I agree with you, the most important policies facing the electorate. But since tonight is on foreign policy, let's start with foreign policy tonight. I got to tell you something. I listened to both men, and the rhetoric is definitely different. I hear a lot of rhetorical choices. I hear Romney using stronger rhetoric, perhaps internationally, than I've heard Barack Obama use. But when it comes to actual policy, whether it's Iran, whether it's the troops in Afghanistan, whether it's China, I don't hear major differences between them, I got to say. On Iran, both agree that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. Both agree that sanctions are right for now, that we shouldn't use force right now. They seem to me, we'll start with that issue. No doubt Romney uses stronger rhetoric, but is there really a difference in policy?
I think the difference between where the president is and where Governor Romney is on Iran, for instance, as long as you brought that up.
Let's go start there.
Is that Governor Romney is more likely to take the leadership role of drawing those red lines for the international community, giving clear and straight warning to Iran that this is a line past which you shall not traverse, and if you do, there are going to be real consequences to pay on that. The president so far has declined to do that. He thinks, well, if we just keep talking, if we just keep doing this, we're have sanctions, we're making some progress. I believe that Governor Romney would be more forceful, as you say, in his rhetoric, but more forceful in terms of this is the red line beyond which you shall not traverse, Mr. Mullah, and if you do, there's going to be consequences.
Mike, I've heard the forceful rhetoric. But when it comes to actual policy, I mean, we both know Benjamin Netanyahu went to the United Nations, went and very clearly said we'd like to see red lines. President Obama said no, our red line is they're not going to get a nuclear weapon. That's our red line. So Mitt Romney was asked, what's your red line? And he didn't name one either.
Well, he's not president now, Mark. He will do it when he has the, you don't interfere with the president's foreign policy like that while he's still president. But you still nonetheless articulate your case that the president has not been forceful enough, has not been out there providing. I mean, this is a president who said that as soon as he was elected, there would be a sweeping change throughout the Muslim community, and he and we would be liked.
He did not exactly say that, Mike.
That was the gist of what he said.
No, the gist was that he felt that we were often hated around the world, and we needed to be on the side of the people.
But specifically the Muslim community was what he said. That the Arab street was going to like us as a result of his election, and it hasn't happened.
Well, we're going to get to Libya, but let me finish on Iran, because I actually think that particularly in Libya, it's a great case where the people, notwithstanding the horrific terrorism that occurred at our embassy, the people of Libya actually do support us. But I'm going to make that argument in a minute. Let me just finish on Iran, because it seems to me that it is okay for a challenger to say what they're going to do. Barack Obama very famously said he would get our troops out of Iraq when he ran for election in 2008. He talked about foreign policy before he was president, and of course he followed through on that. He did get our troops out. He said he would do a surge in Afghanistan. He did that too. If Mitt Romney believes in red lines, I think he should state them. Otherwise, it seems to me that Mitt Romney, whether it's Iran or domestic issues, and we're definitely going to go there, seems to me I see a theme, and this is the theme of a man who says, vote for me, and I'll tell you why later. Whether it's his tax plan or whether it's Iran, it seems to me he says, I'm going to do really good things. I'm going to create jobs. How am I going to do it? I'll tell you later. It's all his secret plans, and that's why voters, I think, don't trust Mitt Romney.
I think voters trust Mitt Romney a lot. I mean, it's the polling is showing that he's well-liked and he's trusted, and the American people have more confidence in him than the president on almost every issue.
No, actually, he's not as liked or trusted as Barack Obama, either in Virginia or across the nation, though the numbers are closer than they used to be. I'll grant you that. Okay, so we talked about Iran. Let's talk about the Arab Spring, since you brought it up. One of the things I think that got very little attention after the Benghazi attack, and of course there's been a huge discussion of exactly how it occurred, who caused it, why they did it. The president, of course, did call it an act of terror the day after. Mitt Romney got that a little wrong.
Please.
Well, I can play the clip. What he said, I believe.
Play the clip.
I believe this is the exact quote. I believe he said, "No act of terror will shake our resolve."
Right.
It's pretty close to the exact words he said.
I hope you have the clip, and I hope we can play it, because it's very clear if you watch it that he's talking in a generic sense, and he is not referring to Benghazi during it.
It was the day after the Benghazi attack.
Play the clip.
I will.
Play the clip.
It's clear to me he's referring not only to Benghazi, but to September 11th, but he's making, I mean, you don't go out the day after our ambassador and 3 other heroes are murdered and say no act of terror will shake our resolve unless you're talking about an act of terror.
It was very clearly a generic comment.
But semantics aside, although I think Mitt Romney looked bad in the last debate with it, I want to address your question of whether the Arab people will like us more. Now, I don't think anyone expected Barack Obama to change 50 years of American policy in 4 years.
Well, he did. He said it was going to happen the day after he was elected.
No, he did not. He did not say the day after he was elected, suddenly all the Arabs in the world were going to love America. He certainly did not make such
love
a sweeping
him
promise.
And love America.
He did not. He didn't say. You'll have to show me your
clip. The implication.
Well, look, I don't think he ever said anything close to that. But I do think he wanted to reset American policy. After all, we do have an American policy of supporting dictators in the Middle East. You can look back to the Shah of Iran, where back in the Eisenhower years, we overthrew an elected government and installed the Shah. And when the Shah was overthrown, we got even worse. We supported dictators in Egypt. We supported on and off dictators in Iraq. It seems to me that in Libya, where the president did do the right thing, I advocated for our intervention a long time ago. No-fly zone. I don't believe we should invade these countries. I believe we should have no-fly zone to protect them so the people can have their own revolution. That's what we did in Libya. Here's the part that's never talked about. I know you know it's true, but I want to focus on it for the listeners here. After the terrorist attack in Benghazi, after a local Libyan militia that almost certainly had ties to al-Qaeda, but it was a local group, Ansar al-Sharia, went in, firebombed the embassy, murdered our ambassador and 3 other brave American heroes. Right after that horrific day, the next day, the Libyan people, massive numbers, thousands of Libyan people, came in, overran a militia, ordinary people, overran the Ansar al-Sharia militia, and basically took over their post and tore it down in a spontaneous revolution on behalf of Americans. Libyans were carrying pictures of Chris Stevens, recognizing what a wonderful hero he was, not just for America, but for the Libyan people. To me, it shows that when the United States is on the right side of history, when we do support the people, they do come to love Americans.
It was a very...
it was very moving to me when that happened.
Look, there's no doubt that al-Qaeda does not have universal support among the people. Without a doubt, they don't have universal support.
I don't think they even have majority support, frankly.
However, what we had was a predictable situation. We had a very dangerous situation. We had a situation where our embassy was attacked both in April and in June, including blowing a hole through the security wall in the June attack.
You mean the consulate, right?
The consulate in Benghazi. Mm-hmm. We had a situation where the ambassador pleaded 3 times for additional security. We had a situation where the head of security there pleaded for additional security, the lieutenant colonel in charge of the military detachment from Salt Lake City, that said, we don't have enough here to defend this place. And the last plea from Chris Stevens to the State Department for more security was the morning that he was murdered.
Wow.
And what happens? Denied, and not only was it denied, but they took the security detachment that was there out and reduced security.
Mike, we have to take a break. It'll be interesting to see if Mitt Romney brings up all the details that you brought up tonight, because he certainly hasn't.
He only has an hour and a half.
If you want to dial in and join the debate, I encourage you to do so. Just dial 888-488-MARK, 888-488-MARK, and you can join in too. Oh, I like that.
Will you be prevented from voting in the November presidential election? Virginia enacted a new voter ID law in May. It expands the types of identification voters can bring to the polls. But if you don't bring one of them, you can only cast a provisional ballot. Then it gets harder, because you must get your ID by noon on the 3rd day after the election to your local election office for your vote to be valid. You can avoid that by bringing a current utility bill, a bank statement, a government check, or your paycheck, but each must have your printed name and address. You can also bring a valid employee photo ID, a driver's license, or a photo ID from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Virginia will play a major role in deciding the presidential election. Make sure your vote counts.
¿Se le complicará votar en las elecciones presidenciales de noviembre? En mayo, Virginia aprobó una nueva ley de identificación electoral, la cual amplía los tipos de identificación que los votantes pueden traer a las urnas electorales. Estas son una factura de servicios públicos, un estado de cuenta del banco, un cheque del gobierno o su cheque de pago. Cada una debe de tener su nombre impreso y la dirección. También puede traer una identificación válida con fotografía, una licencia de conducir o una identificación con fotografía del Departamento de Motores y Vehículos. Si usted no trae ninguna de ellas, su voto será solamente provisional y se le dificultará más después, porque usted debería presentar su identificación máximo hasta el mediodía del tercer día de realizarse las elecciones. Virginia jugará un papel importante en decidir la elección presidencial. Asegúrese de que su voto cuente.
that Mike Lane and I were talking about, where the day after the attack in Benghazi, the President of the United States said that no act of terror shall shake our resolve. Mike asked for the full context. I'm a big believer in full context. Let's play what Barack Obama said the day after the attack in Benghazi.
Americans were killed in an attack on our diplomatic post in Benghazi. Among those killed was our ambassador, Chris Stevens, as well as Foreign Service Officer Sean Smith. We are still notifying the families of the others who were killed. And today, the American people stand united in holding the families of the 4 Americans in our thoughts and in our prayers. The United States condemns in the strongest terms this outrageous and shocking attack. We're working with the government of Libya to secure our diplomats. I've also directed my administration to increase our security at diplomatic posts around the world. And make no mistake, we will work with the Libyan government to bring to justice the killers who attacked our people. Since our founding, the United States has been a nation that respects all faiths. We reject all efforts to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. But there is absolutely no justification to this type of senseless violence. None. The world must stand together to unequivocally reject these brutal acts. Already, many Libyans have joined us in doing so, and this attack will not break the bonds between the United States and Libya. Libyan security personnel fought back against the attackers alongside Americans. Libyans helped some of our diplomats find safety, and they carried Ambassador Stevens' body to the hospital, where we tragically learned that he had died. It's especially tragic that Chris Stevens died in Benghazi because it is a city that he helped to save. At the height of the Libyan revolution, Chris led our diplomatic post in Benghazi. With characteristic skill, courage, and resolve, he built partnerships with Libyan revolutionaries and helped them as they planned to build a new Libya. When the Gaddafi regime came to an end, Chris was there to serve as our ambassador to the new Libya, and he worked tirelessly to support this young democracy, and I think both Secretary Clinton and I relied deeply on his knowledge of the situation on the ground there. He was a role model to all who worked with him and to the young diplomats who aspire to walk in his footsteps. Along with his colleagues, Chris died in a country that is still striving to emerge from the recent experience of war. Today, the loss of these 4 Americans is fresh, but our memories of them linger on. I have no doubt that their legacy will live on through the work that they did far from our shores and in the hearts of those who love them back home. Of course, yesterday was already a painful day for our nation as we marked the solemn memory of the 9/11 attacks. We mourned with the families who were lost on that day. I visited the graves of troops who made the ultimate sacrifice in Iraq and Afghanistan at the hallowed grounds of Arlington Cemetery and had the opportunity to say thank you and visit some of our wounded warriors at Walter Reed. And then last night we learned the news of this attack in Benghazi. As Americans, let us never, ever forget that our freedom is only sustained because there are people who are willing to fight for it, to stand up for it, and in some cases lay down their lives for it. Our country is only as strong as the character of our people and the service of those, both civilian and military, who represent us around the globe. No acts of terror will ever shake the resolve of this great nation, alter that character, or eclipse the light of the values that we stand for. Today we mourn for more Americans who represent the very...
Okay, I'm going to stop the tape. I did let it play at length, Mike. I know you wanted the full context. I maybe gave even more context than you wanted. He called, there is the obvious statement, no acts of terror will shake our resolve, where I agree with you, he's referring not only to Benghazi, but also to September 11th and other attacks. However, he clearly is referring to Benghazi as well. He condemned the outrageous attack. He called them killers who attacked our people. He said it was a brutal act. He said that we will punish the perpetrators. He said that no action can justify this violence. He called it. I mean, you really have to parse words to
say
that Barack Obama is not referring to this as a terrorist attack.
I think you have to parse words to say that he is referring to this as a terrorist attack. You and I will forever disagree. Perhaps it's our perspectives on that, but I'm not buying it. That was a line that was thrown in, a generic line. It was not, after he pivoted 4 times. The time to bring that in was when he was talking about in the first minute and a half the specific attack on Benghazi.
When he condemned the outrageous attack.
But when he pivoted to, of course, 9/11 is a big anniversary for us, and wove it into that, it was very clear to me that it was a generic line. It was not a specific line in Benghazi.
Here's what I don't understand.
But it doesn't matter.
No, but here's what
it doesn't matter.
That's exactly it. Here's what I don't understand. There's a brutal attack on our consulate. Every president, unfortunately, has suffered. There's been a terrorist attack. Obviously, September 11th happened under George W. Bush. Under Bill Clinton, we had the attacks on our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. You can go George Bush Sr., there were attacks in Somalia. Ronald Reagan, there were the vicious attacks in Lebanon. I don't blame Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Bill Clinton, or George W. Bush for these horrible terrorist attacks. We're still finding out exactly what happened. Do you really deny that Barack Obama and Secretary Clinton are going to do a full investigation to find out how this happened, why it happened, to prevent it from happening again?
You know what, Mark? For 2 weeks, we were told that they couldn't comment on it. Actually, for about 10 days, they couldn't really comment on it. Susan Rice said this when she did her 5 appearances in one day on the 5 different talk shows, that they couldn't comment beyond their original statements because it was being investigated by the FBI.
That's what she said. It was preliminary and being investigated.
Do you know now it's been how many days, and the FBI has been there once for 2 hours, and that's it? Well, it's not even safe enough to bring a team of FBI investigators over there. The crime scene, or whatever you want to call it, the terrorist scene, whatever the FBI is investigating, has been contaminated. It's gone. There is no FBI investigation, and it's time for President to admit that there's no FBI investigation.
Well, first of all, there is an investigation. No, obviously, not all the facts are from things on the scene. You can get a lot of information from satellites, from spies, from imagery, from pictures and all that. The crime scene was contaminated at the time of the crime. Ansar al-Sharia burned the consulate to the ground. People traipsed through it. Let's face it, if it wasn't safe enough for our ambassador, it clearly wasn't safe enough for the day after the attack for the FBI to come in. They had to make it safe for that 2-hour trip that you're talking about. The problem with this consulate to begin with, let's face facts here, is that it wasn't an embassy. That's why I corrected you on the embassy. Embassies all across the globe are heavily protected, as they should be. We know that embassies are subject to attack. Our embassy in Tripoli is heavily protected. This was an ad hoc thing created because of the Libyan war. In fact, Chris Stevens very bravely came. He didn't come in on a military American ship. He came in on a Greek boat where he secretly entered Benghazi. At the time, it was territory controlled by the rebels. Gaddafi was still in Tripoli. They started this temporary building. And sure, in hindsight, it's easy to say we should have made this building much stronger. But part of the reason why he was there and there was a consulate in Benghazi is because of the strange, temporary, unusual nature of what happened in Libya. Surely you have some sympathy for the fact that we had to get in there and, they didn't expect this was going to happen.
I have no sympathy for the fact that 3 times the ambassador requested additional security. At least one time that we know of, the head of the military contingent there providing security requested additional security, and the decision was to bring the military security out, leave the place unguarded with the exception of the Libyan militias, which were supposed to be providing the security. And
there was a company.
As long as you bring the British up. But the Libyan militias were specifically not up to the task, and they were said by Ambassador Stevens in his cable back to the State Department that they were not up to the task. And as long as you brought up the British, right next door to our compound was the British compound where they had their consulate. They evaluated the security situation, and they closed it, and they brought all of their people out because they know they couldn't do it.
After the attack. They brought all their people home. Right. It's very easy in hindsight. It'd be very easy for me in hindsight to say that our embassies in Tanzania and Kenya were not well protected, that our troops in Somalia and Lebanon or in Saudi Arabia when they were attacked there were not well protected. Look, I have no doubt that this is going to be fully investigated, and if a State Department official, and you're acting like it's certainty, I think it's still questionable, but if a State Department official turned down a request for security from the ambassador, that person's head should roll. And to be fair, Paul Ryan, your vice presidential nominee, was one of the leaders who wanted to cut back on the kind of State Department funds that goes to consulate and embassy securities all across
Right, but
the
that doesn't mean that the administration doesn't have the ability to shift it from
true.
the Netherlands, perhaps.
I think the Netherlands is probably safe. But you know what? They could do an attack in the Netherlands too, and then you'd come at me tomorrow and you'd say we should have known that in Amsterdam there were crazy wild. Listen, there have been terrorist attacks in Spain, in England, in France. They could occur in the Netherlands. It is a difficult decision. Look.
The budget is the budget. The administration.
Hindsight.
No, it's easy to say in foresight. When the people on the ground, when the ambassador himself 3 times requests additional security, when the head of the military contingent, the lieutenant colonel in charge of the detachment there, requests additional...
We will find out more information.
And in return for him asking for additional help, his whole unit was transferred out and it was given to the Libyan militias who were not up to the task.
Will this be an issue tonight on the debate?
I believe it will.
Okay. And do you think that President Obama... Because Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has basically said, look, if there was a need for security, it's my fault. I should have done something about it.
It's not her fault. It's the president's fault.
And then the president very clearly said in the second debate, hey, the buck stops here, which I think Americans appreciated, recognizing. But I also think that Americans have a lot of sympathy. There were those that blamed George W. Bush for the much more horrendous September 11th attacks. As awful as these attacks in Libya were, it was 4 brave Americans who died, not 3,000 brave Americans who died. And people said, that Condoleezza Rice got a cable. Bin Laden determined to attack the United States. There was a whole big discussion. But I think most Americans felt, look, obviously Bush didn't want those attacks. Obviously Obama didn't want those attacks. And we should do what we can in the future to strengthen even temporary consulates and not just our embassies.
It's a matter of naivety. I believe the president's naive about what's happening in the Middle East. I think he's naive about our relationships with people who will never like us. He said in his inaugural speech that if you'll that we will extend our hand and we're asking you to unclench your fist.
Right.
It was a naive statement. It hasn't worked.
I think it actually has worked. I think it has worked in Libya. I actually think that...
it hasn't. I mean, look, the Libyan government is simply not strong enough to provide the protection that we need.
Is a miracle in the Middle East in that it is neither al-Qaeda radical Islamists nor is it a dictatorship. It is virtually unheard of in the Arab world.
And it's powerless.
It's getting there. It's getting there. To have the first Arab country that is neither a dictatorship nor a radical Islamic extremist government, that's a miracle in and of itself. And it shows to me that with time, this kind of policy can be
when they can secure their country, I'll grant that to you.
It's going to take some time, just like it will in Iraq and Afghanistan. 888-488-MARK. What do you think about this? We'll be right back after this.
다가오는 대통령 선거에 여러분의 소중한 한 표를 행사하기 위한 서류가 준비되셨나요? 버지니아주는 지난 5월 유권자 신분 확인을 위한 새로운 법안을 제정했는데요. 이 법안은 기존에 비해 다양한 형태의 신분증을 사용할 수 있도록 했습니다. 하지만 신분증을 지참하지 않으시면 선거 당일 개표에 포함되지 않는 예비 투표용지밖에 사용하실 수 없습니다. 예비 투표를 유효하게 만들려면 반드시 선거 3일 뒤 정오까지 본인 지역구 선거 사무실에 신분증을 제시하셔야 합니다. 이런 불편을 피하시려면 투표소에 나오실 때 다음 서류 중 하나를 꼭 지참하셔야 합니다. 가장 최근의 공공요금 청구서, 은행 명세서, 정부에서 발행한 수표, 이름과 주소가 명시된 월급 수표, 이 밖에도 운전면허증, 사진이 첨부된 직원신분증, 교통국에서 발행된 사진이 붙은 신분증을 사용하실 수 있습니다. 버지니아주는 이번 대통령 선거에서 가장 중요한 접전 지역 중 하나입니다. 여러분의 소중한 한 표를 꼭 행사해 주세요.
Every year, 350,000 people are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Who will be their caregivers?
I am a caregiver.
Yo soy la que cuida a mi abuelo.
I'm a caregiver.
Call 1-800-437-2423 for a free brochure from Alzheimer's Disease Research on caring for those you care for the most. 1-800-437-2423.
I'm a caregiver. Mom, you really look good.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. My guest is Mike Lane, Republican strategist. I, of course, am a former Democratic congressional attorney. We disagree on a lot of things, but we strongly agree that you should go out and vote on Election Day for the candidate of your choice, and we'll be making an argument for the candidates of our choice. If you want to call in, though, and challenge anything either of us have said or both of us, please, we encourage you to do so. Just pick up the phone. The local number is 571-749-1166. Or you can call toll-free, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Tonight is the last presidential debate. It is in Boca Raton, Florida, but they can't talk about Medicare, even though that's probably a big concern to the voters in Boca Raton, Florida.
They can talk about Israel.
They can talk about Israel. They certainly can. Tonight, it's on foreign policy. Mike, we've talked about Iran. We've talked about Libya. Before I get to Syria and China, which I also want to discuss, just briefly, Iraq and Afghanistan. I think, and Osama bin Laden. Obviously, somewhere in tonight, Obama's going to point out that he killed Osama bin Laden. I think he'll mention it, and I think Romney would do best simply to praise the president for that and move on. If he tries to quibble with it at all, he's not going to look good tonight.
You know, there's no doubt the president, if he made the decision, made the right decision.
He made the decision, if the commander-in-chief made the decision.
There are some reports out today that it was Leon Panetta who made the decision.
Give me a break. The ultimate decision, as you say, rests with the President of the United States.
There are some reports that it was Leon Panetta who made the decision. However, look, this is a decision that there's only one person, two people. There's two people who would not have made this decision. Bill Clinton had the opportunity several times, and he always declined to do it.
Wait a minute.
And Joe Biden has been very public about the fact that he always loudly counseled the president not to do it. Those are the only two people in the world who would not have made that decision.
I'm not even going to go there because, of course, Bill Clinton was looking at an attack before 3,000 Americans were murdered.
Right.
And Joe Biden was talking about the inherent qualms with the nature of the operation. He has not said whether he would go one way or the other.
Why did we have to wait for 3,000 Americans to be killed before we took bin Laden out? I mean, Bill Clinton he did not step up to the plate when he had the chance.
We can't always know who's going to do what.
We knew bin Laden was a really bad guy. Even during Clinton presidency, we knew he was public enemy number one.
Why didn't George Bush take him out in the first 9? We knew where he was before September 11th. He had his chance too.
There were not there were not presentations given to the president with that opportunity the way there were.
We know, in fact,
Bill
that Condoleezza Rice put off from January to August Sandy Berger's statement that bin Laden's determined to attack the United States. Let's not go back there. Let me talk about quickly about Iraq. Obama brought our troops out of Iraq, as he promised to do. He deserves some credit for that. I don't think is Romney going to dispute that was a good idea. He's not going to dispute that.
I think I don't think in fact, I don't think Iraq will be more than a single mention. The president will claim credit for it, and it'll go. If I had the time to get into it, I would argue that it was precipitous and premature. But it's water over the dam.
I don't think we're ever going to make Iraq a wonderful, pure, perfect democracy, just like I think Libya won't be pure or perfect, although I think it's a lot better than it was before. And I think Afghanistan is actually very similar. Barack Obama has said we are leaving in 2014. We've given this...
Except he's now negotiating an extension for our troops past 2014.
Well,
that was three-day-old news. He's now trying to leave our troops in past this promised date.
We left a few troops in Iraq as well. But the idea that the Afghanis are responsible for their own welfare, the war in Afghanistan is America's longest war. Used to be the Revolutionary War, then it was Vietnam. Now that is the war that has lasted the longest. It has been almost 10 years now. In fact, maybe more than, a little over 10 years since we've been in Afghanistan. Look, the Russians tried to invade Afghanistan. The British tried to invade Afghanistan. I'm all for stopping terrorism. I'm all for bombing terrorist training camps and seeking them out. I'm a big fan of the drones. Maybe some Democrats aren't. I certainly am. When we could take out a terrorist leader. But occupying an entire nation, I don't think is a good idea. Whether it's Libya or Syria, which I'm going to get to, I often support people fighting dictators, but I never think that American troops need to be on the ground except in exceptional situations. Yes, September 11th was exceptional. Yes, we had to go back in. But I don't know. After we deposed the Taliban back in 2002, 2003, I don't know what we've accomplished much in the last 10 years. We keep trying to train Afghanis to defend themselves and be on our side, and then they turn around and they attack us. And they kill us. Well, how much more good can we do in 2015, 2016, 2017? When will this war end under Mitt Romney?
I'll tell you what the accomplishment is. Under President Bush, it's continued, but here's the accomplishment. We went into Afghanistan. Why? We went into Afghanistan to depose the Taliban
Yes.
and to make sure that al-Qaeda could not use the sanctuary provided by the Taliban to have their operational training camps to run and plan and practice
we
their
achieved that
operations
within a year.
and things like that.
Within a year after the invasion.
But if you leave, the Taliban comes back. Now, where are we?
Mike, the Taliban lives in Pakistan, and we haven't invaded Pakistan.
Okay, but
they have 100 times more power in Pakistan than they have in Afghanistan.
But they're coming back, and they're coming back because the president invited them back. Look, Mike, here's what's happening in Afghanistan. Under George Bush's administration, they were denied the opportunity to reconstitute and to come back and to use Afghanistan. Now that we are pulling out, and now that there's a power vacuum in the Afghanistan, they're already having their talks as to, okay, who's going to be part of the coalition government. And inexplicably, not only did the president not say, okay, almost everybody, but not the Taliban, he didn't say that. He said, you have to have the Taliban come back in and be part of this. Well, he's inviting the Taliban back into Afghanistan. Why? I don't understand that. I think it's part of his naivete.
No, first of all, the Taliban is different from Al-Qaeda, as you know. The Taliban were the rulers. They had all kinds of they're not all fundamentally anti-American. Certainly the government is. The leaders of it are. He's inviting the leaders back. But unless your plan is to occupy Afghanistan for 100 years or so, to be in there as long as we've been in Germany and Japan and South Korea, unless that's your plan with all the thousands of Americans that'll be killed in that, we got to leave sometime. And the moment we leave, there will be a bit of a vacuum. And at the end of the day, there'll be some Al-Qaeda that'll get in Afghanistan. There's Al-Qaeda in America. There's Al-Qaeda in England. I'm sure there'll be Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Here's my point. The strongest place for Al-Qaeda is right now, actually two places, is Pakistan and Yemen. That's where they're at their strongest. We haven't invaded Pakistan. We haven't invaded Yemen. We send drones there. And yet they have more power to harm us from Pakistan and Yemen than they do in Afghanistan. So unless we want to start occupying virtually the entire Middle East, we've got to go out, take our troops home, not spend so much money, and when we see them reconstituting, bomb the heck out of them.
They don't have free reign in Pakistan.
They've got
Yemen.
a lot of rain in Pakistan and Yemen.
Let's face it, the Pakistani government doesn't control the mountainous areas and the rural
They have
areas,
even more power in Yemen.
They have a lot there. But they'll have all of Afghanistan. When you invite the Taliban back in, they will have all of Afghanistan.
If they did, we would bomb them again.
It's reminiscent, Mark. You know, we had this discussion when we were talking about Egypt when it was first happening.
That's true.
And you asked me, was I in support of getting rid of the brutal guy, Mubarak? And I agreed with you. Getting rid of Mubarak was a good thing to do. But I thought we'd work with the Egyptian people in making sure that they had a good, reasonable, democratic government. No, what did they wind up with? They wound up with the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood should have been banned from participating, not given the presidency. It's ridiculous what's happened to Egypt. It's a failure.
Part of the dangers of democracy is something really strange happens. When you have a democracy, the people of that country get to choose their leaders. It's weird, but it is exactly what democracy means.
It is.
The people of Egypt are not happy with the United States because we supported Mubarak for all those years. It's one of the reasons why I think that Libya will turn out to be successful, because we didn't support Gaddafi like we supported Mubarak. It's another reason why I support, and you know I do, a no-fly zone in Syria, because I think the people of Syria, we did support Mubarak, but we never supported Assad. Syria has never been a friend of the United States, the government in any way, shape, or form. If we did a no-fly zone there, then the people, just like in Libya, I'm not advocating troops on the ground, but could win that war, because right now Assad is using Syrian planes supplied by the Russians to kill Syrian people, and I think we would get support. It's different in a country like Egypt, or Iran for that matter, where we supported the dictator for decades. It takes some time to rebuild that relationship.
Egypt has turned out to be a disaster.
I don't think so.
Morsi is awful. The Muslim Brotherhood is part of the North African caliphate that they're trying to establish.
Mike, there's worse than Morsi. No, there's worse than Morsi.
Not much worse than Morsi.
There's the group, the Salafis, who are more fundamentalist than the Muslim Brotherhood. Morsi, it seems to me, is a pragmatist. He wants United States aid. No. He's carefully trying to balance U.S. interests. He has said he's not going to disturb the peace treaty with Israel. I am not singing praises of Morsi. Please don't get me wrong. But I think it could be worse. I absolutely think that Iran is far more dangerous than Egypt. There's a difference between a guy trying to help the people of Egypt, and I really believe he is trying to help, and mixing in the fundamentalist characteristic of some of the people there with practical things, and all-out mullahs trying to declare war on the world. Morsi, trust me, he's not Taliban. He's not Al-Qaeda.
No, he's Muslim Brotherhood, which is a terrorist organization.
First of all, there's all kinds of Muslim Brotherhood. You know that there's
the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization so designated by our State Department.
The Muslim Brotherhood is different in every country. The Muslim Brotherhood in Lebanon is different from... yes, they did. Groups in the Muslim Brotherhood did assassinate Sadat. That's true. Who was also a dictator. A dictator that helped U.S. interests, a dictator that made peace with Israel, but nevertheless wasn't giving things to the Egyptian people. Let me ask you this.
In a year,
how would
we'll
Mitt
regret Morsi more than we do today.
Let's get back to the election. On Egypt, what would Mitt Romney do differently today if he's elected president January 2013? He's always talking about day one. On day one, what would Mitt Romney do differently in Egypt?
I think that our foreign aid would be conditional rather than unconditional.
I think it is right now.
No, what are we getting out of them? Absolutely nothing.
I think it is right now.
We're giving them $2 billion a year and we get nothing.
After the attack on our embassy in Egypt, the one that didn't kill anyone, but they did attack, they did go over the walls, Obama cut off aid to Egypt. That's conditional aid. We are not supplying them aid right now, and Morsi knows he's going to have to do more pro-American stuff to get that aid. That is conditional. That's occurring right now. Romney wouldn't change that. Let me ask you this. On Syria, would Romney do anything? Because he talks a good game, but I haven't heard support for a no-fly zone.
Here's the problem.
I haven't heard any difference from what Obama has said, which is humanitarian aid.
Mark, 6 months ago, I'd have been in total agreement with you on Syria on a no-fly zone. I thought it was the right thing to do. I mean, this dictator... Assad is slaughtering his people.
30,000 people.
30,000 dead, and it's going to go to 60,000 if he stays in there.
Probably.
He's trying to start a war with Turkey. I mean, it's just ridiculous what this idiot is doing. But it used to be the altruistic rebels against Assad.
And now they're turning to Al-Qaeda.
That was a year ago. That was 6 months ago.
Right.
Now the bad guys are in there taking over the thing because we waited too long to get involved.
I agree
because
with you.
we waited too long.
I
don't know what I'd do.
I don't dispute that, but I think that's another reason why we need to get involved, because I think we're involved, they're likely to have separation between the altruistic rebels and the bad guys, like they have in Libya. Like they've made that separation. I think that they still can. We got 1 minute left on foreign policy, maybe 30 seconds. On China, again, Mitt Romney talks a good game. On day one, I'm going to label him a currency manipulator. Mitt Romney's the guy whose companies outsourced everything to China. Isn't he saying, I'm going to punish those companies that did exactly what I did when I ran Bain Capital? Come on.
No, he's going to punish the Chinese government. The Chinese government is manipulating its currency, and it's going to get more active in manipulating its currency as its economy continues to decline.
And so we're going to have a trade war.
And so... Well,
we're going to have a trade war, and the prices will go up all around the globe.
No,
and we're not going to have a trade war.
We're not going to have a trade war. We're going to have very effective, firm diplomacy with China to stop ripping off American economy and American jobs by manipulating their currency. That's what we'll have, and Obama won't do it.
China has already started to appreciate its currency, and it's done so without a trade war due to Obama's policy. 888-488-MARK. We're going to turn to domestic policy in our last 15 minutes, and it's your chance to join us.
다가오는 대통령 선거에 여러분의 소중한 한 표를 행사하기 위한 서류가 준비되셨나요? 버지니아주는 지난 5월 유권자 신분 확인을 위한 새로운 법안을 제정했는데요. 이 법안은 기존에 비해 다양한 형태의 신분증을 사용할 수 있도록 했습니다. 하지만 신분증을 지참하지 않으시면 선거당일 개표에 포함되지 않는 예비 투표용지밖에 사용하실 수 없습니다. 예비 투표를 유효하게 만들려면 반드시 선거 3일 뒤 정오까지 본인 지역구 선거사무실에 신분증을 제시하셔야 합니다. 이런 불편을 피하시려면 투표소에 나오실 때 다음 서류 중 하나를 꼭 지참하셔야 합니다. 가장 최근의 공공요금 청구서, 은행 명세서, 정부에서 발행한 수표, 이름과 주소가 명시된 월급 수표, 이 밖에도 운전면허증, 사진이 첨부된 직원신분증, 교통국에서 발행된 사진이 붙은 신분증을 사용하실 수 있습니다. 버지니아주는 이번 대통령 선거에서 가장 중요한 접전 지역 중 하나입니다. 여러분의 소중한 한 표를 꼭 행사해 주세요.
Bạn sẽ bị ngăn cản không cho bỏ phiếu trong cuộc bầu cử tổng thống vào tháng 11 sắp tới không? Tiểu bang Virginia đã ban hành một số quy luật mới vào tháng 5 vừa qua, ảnh định những chứng minh thư cần khi đi bầu. Những quy luật này cho phép cử tri mang theo một trong những loại chứng minh thư khi đi bầu. Nếu người đi bầu không có bất cứ những chứng minh thư nào họ chỉ có thể bầu vào một phiếu tạm. Vấn đề trở nên phức tạp hơn khi cử tri phải đem một chứng minh thư đến văn phòng bỏ phiếu trước trưa ngày thứ Ba sau ngày bầu cử để phiếu tạm thời được trở nên thực. Cử tri có thể tránh trường hợp nêu trên xảy ra bằng cách đem theo một trong những chứng minh thư sau đây: hóa đơn điện nước, báo cáo chương mục của ngân hàng, chi phiếu trả tiền của chính phủ, chi phiếu lương và điều kiện là có tên và địa chỉ của cử tri. Cử tri cũng có thể đem theo bằng lái xe, căn cước có hình do sở làm cấp hoặc chứng minh thư do Sở Giao thông tiểu bang cấp. Tiểu bang Virginia sẽ có là một vai trò rất quan trọng vào kết quả cuộc bầu cử tổng thống sắp tới. Quý vị phải biết chắc là phiếu của mình sẽ được hợp lệ.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I am Mark Levine. I hope you appreciated those get out the vote efforts. The Fairfax Channel 10 has worked very hard on them. I don't happen to speak Vietnamese or Korean, but I'm told that they are accurate and they're telling people to go and vote and what ID they will need to vote, and that's just a public service the station provides. And
I think it's wonderful.
I think it is wonderful.
Everyone go vote. Vote for the Republican of your choice, but vote.
Vote for the Democrats. Tim Kaine needs your help. Barack Obama needs your help.
Tim Kaine does need help.
No, he's going to win. I actually think that not only Tim Kaine will win Virginia.
I'll take that bet.
All right. You got it. I actually think Obama can win Virginia as well. The latest polls I've seen, they're tied. It's interesting. I've worked out the math. It seems to me that Ohio, of course, is the firewall. I think Ohio will win Ohio and the nation. But if he doesn't win Ohio, he needs Virginia. And so Virginia is tied right now and could really make a difference. Your vote may well decide who's president of the United States. It's really an exciting moment.
Go Mitt.
Go Barack Obama. So the debate tonight will be on foreign policy. That's why we spent most of the time talking about foreign policy. But Mike and I both believe the election will primarily be decided on domestic issues, primarily on the economy. Let's face it, Mike, when the unemployment level dipped down to 7.8%, Mitt Romney lost a great part of his rhetoric. His whole point was Obama can't get the unemployment rate below 8%. He has. We're on the mend. It was a great recession, the worst recession since the Great Depression. But by helping the auto industry survive, by the stimulus package, by health care law, a lot of ways, Barack Obama is bringing this country back. And one of the great ways that I like that he's doing it is he's going to take the laws that give tax incentives for outsourcing, that actually encourage companies like Mitt Romney's company, Bain Capital, to outsource jobs. He's going to take away those tax incentives. That's a clear difference between him and Mitt Romney, and I think one that Americans need to look at.
Mark, first of all, please.
You don't know where to begin.
Neither you nor Barack Obama can make the case that 7.8% is a good number.
No,
it
but
is a dismal number.
It's much better than
awful number.
Ronald Reagan had 10.8%.
It's a number that he needs to be fired over. When he announced his stimulus package, he said that if we adopted his stimulus package, we would be down to 5.6% unemployment by today.
No, Christina Romer did not have.
It's a failure.
You know how economic data is. First of all, there's an initial number. We did not know how badly Bush. No one knew. Economists did not know how badly Bush destroyed the economy until months later. She made that prediction before Barack Obama was even president because she didn't have the numbers at that time. They quickly revised that. The heart of the matter is we're moving in the right direction, and Mitt Romney would take us in the wrong direction.
We're not moving in the right direction.
Sure, we are.
7.8%. I'll tell you what. I'll make you a bet. I'll make you a bet that the unemployment numbers that are supposed to be released the Monday before the election are not released. They exercise their prerogative of delaying it for 7 days because, it's not ready yet. I'll make you that bet. Because
I don't know
the numbers,
whether it will be.
It was a one-time blip that we got 7.8%.
Even if it's 8%, the point is under Ronald Reagan, unemployment was 10.8%. We have a problem in America, and I would argue the problem goes something like this. It used to be that very wealthy people needed the American middle class. You go back to Henry Ford in the 1920s, you go back to the 1950s, the middle class in America were working hard, and the rich made money off of them because if they worked hard, they'd buy their products, they could work at low wages, and they could make products here in America. Today, people like Mitt Romney don't need Americans to make money. If they want really cheap labor, they go to China, they go to India, they go to Mexico. What people like Mitt Romney have done is completely written off the 90% of Americans in the middle class and the poor, completely written them off because they don't need them anymore. There's this rich class that only depends on Chinese, Mexican, and Indian labor. That is the way Mitt Romney ran Bain Capital. That's the way he's going to run the country.
All right, Mark, your economic analysis is wrong. Your analysis of Mitt Romney is wrong. And, I don't know where else to start. Look, I mean, you flummoxed me here.
Go. I'm waiting.
I have no idea where to start on this. Look, Mitt Romney is going to do what Barack Obama has not done. He's going to represent 100% of all Americans rather than just select
except the 47% that are victims that he writes off in private at $50,000 fundraiser.
He retracted that comment. The president has never retracted
He retracted it after he was caught. He retracted it months later.
The president has had 4 years. The president went on television and said, you know what? If I can't get this done in 3 years, it should be one term.
Franklin Roosevelt didn't get it done in 4 years either, but we don't blame him for the Great Depression. We blame Herbert Hoover. And in 8 years, he got it done.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to allow small businesses to create jobs rather than penalizing small businesses the way Barack Obama has.
Give me specifics, because Mitt Romney won't. Mike, I trust. Much more than Mitt Romney.
We're going to work on energy independence for America and create domestic energy production and domestic energy jobs, unlike Barack Obama, who puts coal miners and oil workers out of work on a daily basis.
You mean the way Barack Obama has gotten us off of lowering our imports of foreign oil for the first time in decades?
That's his lousy economy. That's the Obama economy that did that. That's not, any...
Specifically? Give me specifics, because you can give me specifics. I know Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan can't give me specifics, but you can. Specifically, what will Mitt Romney do to help the economy? Name something.
I told you. We're not going to penalize small business.
We're not going to penalize small business. Give me specifics. What do you want? Because Barack Obama's had tax incentives for small business. They were in his stimulus package. He had another Jobs Act to help small business, and the Republicans refused to pass it when he was president.
And there are 57 jobs bills in the Senate that passed the House that are sitting there waiting for Harry Reid to bring them up for a vote, and he hasn't brought a single one up for a vote.
Give me something specific. Now, I guess Mitt Romney could end pollution regulations and allow small business to put more arsenic in our river.
The first thing he's going to do is authorize the Keystone Pipeline. Okay, that's up to 20,000 jobs. Up to 20,000 jobs for the Keystone Pipeline.
We might get 1,000 Canadian jobs. We won't get any American. This is a Canadian company. You know what the Keystone Pipeline does, Mike?
They're not going to build. They're not going to use Canadian workers in Nebraska and Dakota and
you're going to give 100 or 500 workers
job
for 1 year, and in return, you're going to destroy the America's economy. Let me tell you why. The Keystone Pipeline right now ends in Missouri.
Why doesn't the president just flat out say then, okay, pipeline bad, we're not going to do it, instead of this, well, I've only studied it for 4 years. I need to study it for 4 more.
If I were the president, I would say pipeline bad. We're not going to do it. He's still studying it. Here's what I know about the pipeline. Right now, the pipeline ends in Missouri. That means that all the oil that comes from Canada lands right in the United States, and we have cheaper prices in the United States than they do on the world spot market. If we build this pipeline to the coast, they can then sell the oil to China, not to the United States. Our gas prices go up. This is like, stabbing ourselves in the throat. This is this would harm the American economy, because instead of the oil coming to us, it would go on the spot market. You probably haven't heard that argument before, have you?
I've heard it.
Okay. All right.
Look.
It's a strong argument.
We have a world economy. There's no doubt that some oil is going to go wherever
Can we prefer Americans over the rest of the world? Are you okay with that? Jobs. Let's talk about jobs. Is it okay with you? Barack Obama has a plan, as you know, that instead of getting tax incentives to outsource jobs, actually gives tax incentives for companies to bring jobs back to the United States.
I think what we ought to do.
What's the Republican problem with that?
I think what we ought to do is get rid of all these artificial distortions to the economy.
Great. We'll start with the subsidies oil companies. We'll get rid of those first.
No. We're not going to start with any particular industry. What we're going to do is we're going to lower. Right now, as our viewers know, America has the single highest corporate tax rate in existence.
And more than half of corporations don't pay it.
We pay 35%. They don't pay it. Corporate tax rate, because they have all these distortions. Right? They have all these. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's bring that down to 25%. So we can attract foreign investment into America.
Great
so they
idea.
won't be taxed and end the loopholes.
Great idea. That is the president's plan.
That's the Romney plan.
That's the president's plan.
Well,
Barack Obama made very clear that if we end the loopholes of the subsidies to corporations, he's willing to lower the corporate tax rate.
He's had 4 years and he's done nothing.
He hasn't had a Republican Congress willing to cooperate with him. If he's reelected in a lame duck and they can't get rid of him after 4 years, they may have to work with him.
Look, anytime he wanted to work with Republicans in terms of lowering the corporate tax rate, he'd have had Republicans falling all over themselves to be first in line to do that.
He wanted to end oil subsidy loopholes. He wanted to end corporate welfare.
And the second thing is, on the unlikely event that the president is reelected and wants to rob the Romney plan and go to the Hill with it, I'm all for it. Go, Mr. President, go. That's fine.
It seems to me that every time President Obama has taken Republican ideas, like Obamacare, which used to be called Romneycare, when he takes that idea, cap and trade was a Republican idea. Both these ideas were put forward by the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute. They loved these ideas until they hated these ideas. Even the stimulus package, which, need I remind you, was 1/3 tax cuts, is something that Republicans used to love, that George Bush used to love, until Obama had control. Even massive deficits. As you know, Bush loved them. Dick Cheney said deficits don't matter. Paul Ryan voted for all these massive deficits. Now Obama's in charge. They don't like it. It seems to me that once President Obama is reelected, the Republican Party is going to have to say yes for once. Yes to even some good, moderate, conservative ideas that Barack Obama has adopted. It seems to me it's time for your party to come home and cooperate, but the only way to do that would be to elect Barack Obama, because if you elect Mitt Romney, then you're going to go far off to the right where your party is leading yourself right now, and even you don't like it.
I wouldn't worry about that. If you study Governor Romney's record as governor of Massachusetts, you'll find that he
had a Democratic Congress in Massachusetts legislature that could actually overrule his vetoes. They had more than 2/3 Democrats in both houses. And they did.
No,
different.
They actually had 83% Democrats
there you go.
In the state
legislature. That's a very different thing. George Bush dealt with Democrats in Texas as well, but he didn't have the same issues in Congress.
Okay.
Mitt Romney,
the thing is, Mitt Romney is not a zealot. He's not an ideologue.
We don't know what he is. He won't tell us.
We know exactly what he is. He's an accomplished businessman who will get our economy going.
How?
Put jobs back.
How?
I told you, the first thing we're going to do is let small business go out there and create jobs.
How?
By letting them keep their capital rather than stealing it from them.
If we lower taxes for the very wealthy people, they'll trickle down. That's the plan.
We don't need to lower taxes. We need to keep taxes exactly as they are, and then as we lower overall rates, we eliminate in a revenue-neutral way the distortions and incentives called loopholes.
We got a minute left.
That's the Romney plan.
I didn't know we were going to go. We could have talked about Medicare and how they want to make a voucher program and all of that. But just since you brought up small business, I talked with some people who work in the Small Business Administration for Obama. And
Government bureaucrats.
No, let's talk about what they said. They said that in 2010, they had a bill to extend small business loans. If there's something small businessmen need, it's loans. They had the plan in March of 2010. The Republicans said, we love the plan. It's a good one, but we can't help the Democrats before their election.
No.
So they waited until October before the election to pass the plan so that its effects wouldn't be felt before the 2010 election. It's cynical, and it shows that your party is putting your party above the nation.
Mark, the simple fact is we can't afford to keep, you have all these great ideas. If we hadn't spent $6 trillion of deficit spending over the last 3.5 years, maybe there would be some money left for good ideas.
And Mitt Romney wants
$10
$10
trillion that the president has spent borrowing it from the Chinese,
and Mitt Romney wants $10 trillion more than that to give tax cuts to the rich. Trickle-down economics has not worked. You need to elect President Obama.
Trickle-down government will not work.
Thank you, Mike, for coming on the show. 2 weeks to Election Day. Whoever you agree with, do not forget to vote. This is Mark Levine signing off.